Hey everybody, it's Joric. Welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for those of you returning for the continued support. If you're new and you just found me, welcome. I like to talk about Portugal, moving and living here, as well as Europe travel news. So please subscribe, share the content if you think it's applicable. Today's topic is a heavy one, and I want to make sure that I try to get to the point and give you succinct information. Many of you may or may not know that I do some consulting on moving to Portugal, the pros and cons, real estate advice, helping with scouting trips, and you can find that information in the description box. This year alone, in 2020, I've probably had more than a dozen people ask me, Joric, hey, we're looking at bringing our grandparents or grandparent or one or both of our parents with us to Portugal. And it's a tough question to ask, but if something were to happen to one of them, they were to pass away, what is the process to get them back to our home country? So I had to do some research, but I'm going to give you this information. I hope you never have to use it. I hope we never have to use it. What I'm going to do is give you the Portugal, what goes on here, the process, as well as then repatriating remains back to the United States, which is where we're from, so that's what I researched. I will say, in looking at the UK, Canada, and Australia, the information in those home countries are very similar to the US, just things might be a little different as far as documentation and process. So what I will tell you at the top, the most important group or people that you're going to be involved with if you do have a loved one that passes away in Portugal is your home country's embassy. They're probably going to be your best friend and closest ally because, as you're going to see here, there's lots of agencies involved, lots of documentation, and again, I hope you never go through this. So I'm going to give you the example again of what happens in Portugal and the US. So here's the US, what you would do. The first call would be to local authorities in Portugal, and I'm going to get to that. But right after that, you would want to contact the U.S. Embassy. This slide shows the phone number to call during normal working hours. If it's outside of normal working hours, there is that number below that you could call the duty officer to help start with arrangements. And so next, what does the U.S. Embassy help with? Here's some of the services. So they help with confirming the death, the identity, and U.S. citizenship of the person that has passed away. They create the consular report of death of a U.S. citizen abroad. That's a long name for a form, but it's critical because you're going to need that form, or legal representative, executor of estates will need that form for life insurance policies, for handling estates, the estate planning piece of things, as well as they'll need that all along the way, showing for getting remains back to the U.S. As well as burial. Then they will also help send copies of this to, again, who needs it, as well as next of kin. They will also help to locate next of kin, so they will help you make phone calls and get a hold of people because it's going to be a very stressful time for you. They'll also help coordinate with the legal representative, or I'll say maybe that it's either going to be a family member or an executor, on how to handle the remains and the personal effects of that person. They're also going to provide advice on how to cover costs for funeral expenses, how to coordinate shipping, whether it be a flight back to the U.S. or some other way. And they can also serve as a conservator if there's no legal rep available in Portugal. They can help on kind of a part-time basis to help expedite things and help if all the loved ones are back in the home country, in this case, the United States. So for those of you that if something happens in Portugal, here are the steps that I found that you need to follow. You need to declare the death. That is done through applying and giving the information to the Civil Registry Office or the IRN Registry. Part of that is you'll need to upload like a copy of the passport or driver's license or something. I'm going to put links in the description so that you can see where, if you need to do this, where to go. Must be done within 48 hours of death. It is free of charge. Once registered with Portugal, you're going to receive a certificate that will serve as the burial license if the decision is to bury the remains here in Portugal, or that will be one of the things that will be needed to be able to get the ball rolling as far as processing and getting the remains back to the home country. Who can state a death? So here, a mortuary agency can state that. The director of hospital where the person passed, a close family friend who was present at the time of death, a religious figure, the police, if it is the situation where a body was discovered and abandoned and then discovered, also the owner of a house or property where the person passed away. So there are numerous people that can inform authorities, not just, let's say, a spouse or a loved one. How quickly do you need to notify authorities? Everything I'm finding, it is within 48 hours of the discovery or knowing of the death. An autopsy, if that happens to take place, there might be situations where it does or it doesn't. If the autopsy is waived within 48 hours, and essentially within 48 hours of the body found. So you kind of, in your head, you have 2 days to work with as you're going through the process. So depending on where you're at, where you are in Portugal, and what the circumstances are, you have that 48-hour window. So things to know about the process in Portugal. What I'm finding is there's no burial or cremation that happens in the first 24 hours of death. Cremation, what I read is the local law says cremation can happen 48 hours after death. Apologize for the typo, if there is an autopsy within 48 hours after autopsy. Embalming, there's no legal obligation for it, but it is available if you request it. Caskets and containers, so whether it be a body or whether it be ashes, they do meet international shipping requirements. So when you're making those decisions, which again, all of this is traumatic and stressful, you won't have to worry about, is this going to be able to get back to a home country? They will know where you're from or where the body or ashes are going to, and they'll make sure that the shipping requirements fit into that. And then the repatriation of remains, it can be up to 5 days going through the process and the paperwork. What I'm finding is usually things don't happen as quickly, like within 2 or 3 days. It takes about 5 working days or more to be able to get the process going, make sure all the documentation is done. And I'll explain why in this next slide. So documents for repatriation to the U.S., if you happen to return a body in a casket. So official Portuguese death certificate, so that's going to be that after you register with one of those 2 agencies here, you'll be able to get a death certificate. The transmit permit from the police, transmit permit from health authorities, an affidavit from the funeral agency, mortuary certificate from the U.S. Embassy. So as you can see right there, there are a number of agencies that and groups you have to work with, and the embassy is going to help you work through that process and get you the right information. And then lastly, if you're looking to repatriate and it's ashes versus a body in a casket, you need the official Portuguese death certificate, a cremation certificate, transit permit from the police, an affidavit from the funeral agency, mortuary certificate from the U.S. Embassy. Much of this is the same regardless of what country you are going to be going back with the remains with. But this is, again, Portugal, how it works, as well as what you need to get back to the U.S. I hope that no one needs to use this video. I understand if no one wants to watch this video. It's something that is it's a difficult thing to talk about, but I want to be straightforward in discussing it, because ultimately, as more people from around the world discover Portugal and move here, this is inevitable. Things are going to happen. And it may not be, I was gearing this towards someone that was older. It could be a spouse. It could be someone younger that something happens to. And at least having a video that you know at least where to start is helpful. So I hope this information is helpful for those of you that may need this or are moving with family members where this may be applicable someday. As always, thank you so much for watching the channel, and thank you for the continued support, and I hope you have a good day.